Yes, it's my turn. My name's Samuel Blansett. My friends call me Casey, and I had originally planned to read something else tonight, but Steve heard me read this on Tuesday, and he said, I highly recommend you read that this week. So I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps for 7 years. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan both, and this is my story coming home. When you look at my life as a whole, it can be broken down into lots of chapters. Each chapter, a life lived in its own right. For example, from the time I was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, in 1982, to 1997 when I was 14 and left Texas to move to Pembroke Pines, Florida. This could be a chapter. Or from 14 years old and a freshman in high school to 2004 when I was barely 21 and I moved out on my own to start my life as an adult. Chapter after chapter of a life lived experiencing new things, making new memories, some good and some bad. In each one of these chapters of my life, there existed different versions of me, entirely different Casamuels, experiencing life in completely different ways of behaving, different ways of interacting with the people around me, and different mindsets that affected the way I made decisions. If you were to zoom in on any one of these chapters and away from the macrocosm, you would see still so many more small chapters within one another. One of these many chapters of my life took place from December 10th, 2010 to June 27th, 2011. During these 7 months, I was deployed to Marja, Afghanistan in southern Helmand province. This would happen to be my second deployment, but my first in Afghanistan. And like before this time in my life and all those different versions of me, this particular version would be what I like to consider peak Samuel Blansett. From about the age of 10, when I saw the movie Top Gun, I always knew that the military was what I wanted to do when I grew up. Being a part of a brotherhood, even before I really knew what that actually meant. I grew up with two brothers, and the three of us shared this same enthusiasm. Playing Army in the backyard, wearing surplus camo my dad would buy us, and playing with wooden shotguns my Papa Teddy hand carved for each one of us. Even going rappelling off small cliffs in the Wichita Mountains of Oklahoma with our dad. We lived for this stuff. I was born to be a warfighter. It was in my blood. It was coded into my DNA. So when I arrived at Camp Dwyer in Afghanistan just before Christmas, December 16th, 2010, I was ready. I'd spent my entire life preparing for this chapter. It had already been written. This is exactly where I was supposed to be. This was Pete Casamuel. I felt like John Rambo himself. I was a trained gunfighter, and this was my calling. There was nowhere else I'd rather be, and nothing else I'd rather be doing. The only thing that mattered was the mission and my brothers. These men I would die for. These men I had suffered with endlessly, training for months and years on end. I had sweated with, bled with, and even cried with. These men were more than my family. They were my tribe, and we were savages. Dogs who'd been kept on a leash for too long, but soon the chains would be removed and we'd be let loose. We were feral and we knew it. December 23rd, 2010, we walked to the flight line after a week of briefings, studying maps of our soon-to-be AO, meetings after meeting with the squad leaders of 2-6, who we'd soon be replacing, in endless tourniquet drills. We lined up in our sticks and waited to board the Ospreys that would be carrying us to our new home. First platoon, my platoon, went to Kapazadi, second platoon to PB Kirsch, 2 clicks to the west, and third platoon to PB Sailor Lara, 3 clicks to our east. It was a cold but sunny afternoon, nerves were high, excitement much higher. Insertion went off without a hitch. However, I would see my first dead body of this deployment only a few hours later. This set the tone for what the rest of my time would be like here. For the next 7 months, operation tempo was at the highest levels. Threat levels were a constant. Enemy engagements were daily. IEDs were a serious problem. Squads went nowhere without the point man sweeping and clearing routes. Don't step where they didn't step. It was always follow the leader. We conducted patrols every day. Sometimes as short as 1 hour and a couple of clicks we walked. Some as long as 8 hours and 12 clicks we'd walk. If we weren't on patrol, we were standing 6-hour posts. And when you weren't on post, you were lifting weights. Sleep was a privilege. During this time, I was honed to a razor's edge. These things came naturally to me. I was unfazed. At least I thought I was. It wouldn't be until years later that I felt the impact of the time I'd spent here. There were good times and there were worse times, but all of it was manageable as long as I was with my tribe, Kilo Company of the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. Over the course of our time here, we lost 3 Marines and countless more maimed or injured. They will never be forgotten. For those of us lucky enough to make it to the end, that time came in the last week of June 2011. Their battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, came to replace us. For a lot of these men, this was round 2 because they had been here only 18 short months ago and participated in the invasion of Marja, alongside my little brother's unit, 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment. This took place when President Obama ordered a troop surge into Helmand Province to clear the Taliban out of Marja, which was considered to be their last stronghold. Clear, hold, build. This was the mission. With 3-6 now occupying the main sleeping areas of Kapazadi, my platoon moved out and slept on the ground in the small mud huts surrounding our LZ inside the wire. I'll never forget the excitement we felt on our last night there, knowing that in the morning birds would be arriving to extract us. All I could think about was taking a hot shower. It would be the first one I'd had since December 23rd of the year before. Also, drinking real, cold, whole milk. It's the little things, but despite my excitement, I managed to sleep that night, albeit not great because it was 100+ degrees even at nighttime. The morning arrived and so did our transportation. It was bittersweet. I'll never forget how I felt that day, staring out the back of the Osprey and over the boarding ramp, past the door gunner, watching the bright pink poppy fields in full bloom, the mud hut compounds, farm fields I'd fought in all shrinking away. The feeling I felt was unadulterated sadness, somehow mixed with ecstatic excitement. I was really confused. On one hand, I was going home to civilization, to hot showers, real food, a soft bed, and my family. On the other hand, I was saying goodbye to a version of me I'd waited my whole life to be and would probably never meet again. I'd have to put him up on a shelf. It's just a drop in the bucket when you look at life as a whole instead of the chapters that write my story. Part of me just wanted to stay here, where my life was simple and the only thing that mattered were my brothers. Part of me never wanted to leave, and I guess a part of me never would. I left him out there in those fields I was watching rush by in a blur with the wind on my face, my rifle between my legs, the smell of aviation fuel, and a heavy heart.